For a regular viewer, you probably know how much the explosion of illicit tobacco annoys me because it's been caused by the greed of the federal government. They jacked up the tobacco tax to high heaven, which created this massive illegal market. And now they're too stupid to reduce the tax, or actually it's probably less that they're too stupid to do it. They just don't want the embarrassment of admitting they got it wrong. Well, the opposition in New South Wales has proposed a way to crack down on these dodgy tobacconists by giving the authorities the power to close shops for a month and then give landlords the right to cancel their leases with 2 weeks' notice. Here's opposition health spokeswoman Kelly Sloan.
Honestly, we need a serious investment, a serious approach to cracking down on these dodgy tobacconists that are pretty much taking over the state. 20,000 around New South Wales now. That's an increase of 1,000 a year. They're popping up on our street corners, across the road from our schools, and we need to take this seriously.
Great idea, Evelyn. The only problem I can see is that you shut one down and then another one opens, and then another one opens. They multiply. We can see them multiplying at the moment. So you can't tell me, OK, we're going to have every compliance officer go and shut down every one of these joints, and they're not just going to open up again tomorrow, because the problem is not enforcing the rules, because there was no problem until a few years ago when the tobacco excise went so high that they created this market. If you reduce the excise, you would eliminate large parts of this market. The poor old states are left to fix up the mess that the feds created.
Yeah, it seems like, in layman's terms, the government creates the problem, then the government regulates the problem that it created, and then we keep going back around on this merry-go-round, and at some point we have to jump off and go, OK, maybe we should stop creating problems that didn't exist in the first place. Like, I am certainly not someone who's for all freedom without any restrained morality. I don't agree with that. However, when it comes to tobacco, alcohol and things, you know, I just think that the less regulation is probably the best, and it's more better to take an educational approach. Do as many ads as you want, do as many educational things to prevent people from, you know, getting addictions and doing things that are not good for their bodies. But when the government gets involved, there are very few things that the government touches that we're better off for in the end.
Well, Darren, why can't the government admit that they've gone too far with the excise?
I think it's because the political class would like to ban smoking and don't have the guts to do it.
And that's the
so
thing.
what they've
Follow
done
through.
is try to tax it to the point where it's completely unaffordable. Lo and behold, we have a black market comes in underneath.
And what did they think was going to happen?
Now you have the problem that all these compliance officers are spending this time trying to shut these down instead of on domestic violence and violent crime.
Well, the compliance officers at the moment are bureaucrats. It's not the coppers doing this job. And that's what Chris Minns was saying recently, is I'm going to have to redeploy my coppers from domestic violence and all this stuff to go and shut down all these shops that the feds essentially have created.
It's a ludicrous notion. And look, it will play out naturally through education. My kids don't smoke. Kids aren't. So
I've never even had a puff of one.
Kids don't drink now either.
No, they don't drink. They don't have
They're really not like us at all.
Yeah.
Well, look, I've tried my best to sort of raise the ledger on my side. But, and of course, they did it with vapes as well, Joe. I mean, it is so obvious.
So this is the problem, right? So if you just make... I mean, you only have to look at what happened in the US in the 1920s to see that prohibition doesn't work, and cracking down on it even more does not make it work. It just... As long as you are financially incentivising people, saying you can sell illegal cigarettes for a huge amount of money, but they will still be so vastly cheap compared to what you're forced to pay legally, that there is this massive profit margin in it for you, and think that, you know, I mean, we've already got, you know, heroin gangs, speed gangs, ice gangs. You know, it's no great surprise that something that is so sort of borderline legal or quasi-legal, they are going to swoop in and they are going to make an absolute mint, and they can afford to have their supply disrupted, and they can afford to have shops shut down, because the higher the price of the cigarettes that they're charging legally means that they've got that much more fat to be able to factor in, you know, however many shipments get intercepted. And then at the same time, this government has done what virtually no other government has done. You know, we're always saying how we're just following Canada's lead on this or that, or New Zealand's lead on this or that, or UK's lead on this and that. All of these other governments have actually made it easier for existing smokers to access vapes and to take up vaping. I think in the UK they actually send you out a kit.
The NHS gives them out for free.
You actually send you out a kit. Say, oh, you're a smoker, here you go, here's your free vape kit, get started. Because while it might not be perfect, it's far less bad for you than smoking. Whereas in Australia, at the same time as they're cracking down on illegal tobacco, they're also cracking down on vapes.
Yes.
And so they are. So there was the numbers that the Telly got a hold of a little while ago. Something like less than 1%. It might have been 0.1%.
Yeah.
Of
Illegal.
vapes are actually purchased legally through the government's pharmacy program.
And
I do that. I feel like a chump.
And the pharmacies don't want to be part of it. The whole thing is just an absolute disaster.